Ministry is not just about preaching and teaching or even feeding people. More often than not, we are called to the people of the hurting souls and hearts. But how do we do this? Well, I'm going to bring on some guests to talk about this. And no, they're not pastors. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Learn Together. I'm your host, Sadie Duran. It's so good to have you and just going on this amazing journey of learning and growing together. So when we think about ministry, we often think about pastoral ministry, pulpit ministry, or missionary evangelist. But have you ever considered chaplaincy ministries? We had talked about this briefly a while back, but there's just so many different aspects of chaplaincy ministry. When you think about chaplaincy ministry, what do you think of even? Maybe military chaplaincy, maybe hospital. There's just very different kinds. Today, we are going to have a great conversation with two amazing chaplains that are just making waves in the marketplace and outside the four church walls. I mean, if you know me, you know my heart. That this Christian faith shouldn't be just remaining within the four walls of church. In fact, our faith is supposed to be shared outside the church. And so we have two amazing guests. And there are Marlene Craft and Ellie Canfield, two different ministries, but pretty amazing. So we're going to learn from their lived experience. I'm going to invite Marlene over here right now. Marlene is actually a friend of mine. I've known her maybe now like 7 years on and off. I've got to know you through senior ministry, adult ministries when I was working at the national office. Hey, Marlene, how are you doing?
Wonderful, Sehi. So good to be with you today. I'm honored to be the very first U.S. missionary to widows. My husband was a pastor for 32 years and died suddenly in my arms. And then after that, my heart became to minister to widows because I was walking through this upside down world of being a widow. And when I looked to the church, they didn't quite know how to help me. So I thought, I need to help the church in ministering to widows. And so that is the direction my life has taken.
Wow, that's really, really fascinating. Instead of just sitting in the back of the church and thinking like, oh, I don't have anybody ministering to me, you're like, you know what, I'm going to start something. What a pioneer and entrepreneur spirit that you have. And so you said that you were the first U.S. missionary to the widows.
Right, missionary chaplain.
Missionary chaplain. So that's a really, really unique ministry because many people, maybe some people will think like, oh, you know what, ministry to the widows, a church can do it. It could be a small group, it could be a life group. It could be a section of a church ministry. So why and how even did you choose this pathway to ministering to the widows as a chaplain?
Well, the beautiful part about being a chaplain is God uses your heart. It doesn't just have to be, like you said, in the pulpit or, the normal things that we think about as ministry. Mm-hmm. But whatever your heart is, you can be a chaplain to it. Just like I have a great friend who's a chaplain to rodeo, and there's golf chaplains and so widows, when this happened, it's like it was a void. I saw a void within the church. And that's the beautiful part of chaplaincy is it can help fill those voids. And whatever God lays on your heart, you can be used through chaplaincy to minister the Lord's love to the church, to the community, and to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. So what does it look like to be a chaplain to the widows? My mother-in-law recently became a widow, and we're just having conversations, and I see that, there are a lot of things that maybe even me as a pastor and a daughter-in-law cannot fill that void. So what does it look like for you when you minister to the widows exactly?
What I do is I encourage churches to have a small group ministry to widows, because where you can't understand what she is going through, widows can connect with each other. That's why the name of the ministry is Widows Link. Mm-hmm. It's connecting widows to the Lord and to each other. And so as widows do that and they connect in a small group together, they can understand one another, share each other's hearts and experience, and like those who are more experienced in grief can help those who are newer in grief. And so it's it's using the pain of your past to help others to heal. So it's a wonderful tool for the church to be able to use. And after my husband passed away, I checked on the internet. I went to big churches in Birmingham asking if they had a widows ministry. There was nothing out there. And so this fall
Mm.
I, I'm releasing a book that will help churches in beginning a small group ministry to widows.
Wow, that is powerful and so necessary. Are you talking about in that book anything about what not to do? I think when I'm hearing your story about ministering to the widows, is the empathy ministry, right? You have to be able to be in that situation in order for you to be more effective in serving the widows. But like for myself, I'm not a widow, but I have widows that I will minister to. So what are some things that we shouldn't do maybe as pastors? Like there are a lot of things that we can do. Maybe go ahead and listen to their conversation, pray over them, visit them often. But what's something that we should not do when we minister to the widows?
You have to be real gentle in their time of grief, especially in the beginning. You can't come along and say, um, God had a purpose for this. They're hurting. They're in the midst of hurting and grieving and so many emotions that they're dealing with. You need to slowly, compassionately listen and be there for them. That's one of the most important things. And just to so many widows after about a month or two, after the phone calls have stopped and the food's not coming in, they feel like they've been forgotten. Everyone else has gone on with their life, and they're still trying to deal with this whole new upside down, turned up world. Like, what do I do with it?
Mhm.
Everyone else's
Yeah.
life is going on, and I'm stopped. So
Mhm.
for a pastor, if they can just touch base,
Mhm.
if it's every couple weeks, just say, how are you doing? Is there
Right.
anything I can do for you? There are so
Mhm.
many ways that the church can help, whether it be
Yeah.
turn a mattress, change a light bulb, just little things around the house where we're used to our husband
Mhm.
doing it. And many times with older widows, they can't do it themselves. So just checking to see if they can help in any way is a wonderful way to reach out to the widow and let them know that they are not forgotten.
Very powerful because in every church there are widows. So that widow ministry is so integral. It's not a side ministry, it is part of the major ministry because that's the body of Christ. So I want to ask you this final questions. What is the most rewarding and challenging part of ministering to the widows, and how can the churches do better? I mean, you kind of touched on how churches can do better and ministers can do better, and slowing down and be more empathetic and just check in with them often. But what is the most rewarding and challenging part in your role?
The most rewarding part is watching the healing of the widows as they get together and as they help one another. And you begin to see them beginning to smile and beginning to open up and connect. It's very tempting as a widow to go inward and to not be around people. But when you can gather them together and connect them together and watch them in their healing process to the point where finally, as they're walking through their grieving period, they can once again realize that God still has a purpose and a hope for them and a future for them. So that's one of the most rewarding
Wow.
things, is to watch and to see that. One of the most challenging things is when I hear from churches, well, we've got a seniors ministry, or, we've only got a couple widows. If you look in the word, it doesn't say, well, if you only have a couple widows, they'll be okay. The Lord says
Mm,
pure and genuine religion is to care for the widows and orphans. And
right,
so
right.
this is a way that you show pure and genuine religion. And so just because they have, some churches say, oh, they have family to take care of them. I have kids that live, one's next door, the other one's 20 minutes away. They have their busy lives.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
widows, you can't assume that naturally they're going to be taken care of.
Mhm.
They're hurting. They need to connect with one another, and they need the church not to forget that they are there.
Yeah. Oh, that is so wonderful. I love your heart, Marlene. In the years that I've known you, you have gone through your personal struggles, going through cancer and everything, but you came out so strong. and you are pushing it through. You're continuing to minister to many people, and that inspires me and so many others. So thank you for your obedience and faithfulness.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Sahi. It's a joy to be with you and be able to share. Thank you.
Thanks. Hey guys, this is so powerful, right? This ministry of empathy. The study tells you that one of the greatest characteristics of a great leader is not your skill sets or knowledge. They is empathy, the ability to be able to relate to people's pain and joy and everything. And so that's how Marlene is doing that. Of course, we have a second guest that I want to introduce you to, Ellie Canfield. She is a hospice chaplain, also done hospital chaplain, so many others. But go ahead, Ellie, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ellie Canfield. I am a hospice chaplain in South Florida. This is my fifth chaplaincy position. And so I've been a hospital chaplain. I've had 3 positions there, and then also an additional hospice position. But I currently work for the #1 hospice company in the United States. Some say it is the best hospice company. I also have clinical pastoral education, 5 units from level 1 trauma hospitals. And I work primarily with the Jews here in South Florida. And so I work interfaith. I work with Christians, Catholics, Jews. I work with Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian Scientists. And so there's a great opportunity to reach out with the love of Christ and touch people's hearts and lives. And then I also teach at 3 different universities. I teach at Evangel University, Southeastern University, and Northwest University. I teach a lot of the pastoral counseling classes. And so I get to raise up and develop future chaplains and counselors, and then also instill into the hearts and minds of the pastors being released into our pulpits, the youth pastors, the children's pastors, the adult lead pastors, the church planners, the importance of pastoring, of caring, of shepherding the flock. And so that connects straight with chaplaincy, because chaplaincy is all about shepherding and caring about people. And so I have that great, unique privilege to work in all of these different intersections, and then also grow and develop the future generations.
Wow, I am just so impressed that a woman like you, equipped and educated, and are making difference, not just in the church, but outside the church and in the educational platform. Man, we just need more Ellie's. You know what I'm saying? We just need more of you. That is so cool. So you briefly talked about you. This has been your 5th chaplaincy role, but you have done. Currently, you're a hospice chaplain, working in the #1 hospice chaplaincy organization. That's amazing. And but you also have been doing the hospital chaplaincy. So just kind of talk to us about what are the similarities and differences between those roles, ministries.
Yeah, so hospital chaplaincy is more fast paced. You're going to see people briefly and then they're going to be released. You're also dealing with a lot of trauma situations. So the traumas that come into the ERs, you're going to even stand at the head and pray while they're starting the operation process and they're cutting off clothes. You're praying for them. You're praying for surgeries. You're also responding to critical incidences like if there's a school shooting and all those individuals are brought in, you are in there. You're also talking to people as they're going through chemo. And so a lot of very difficult situations, you're utilizing counseling skills. Now, to be in the hospital situation as a chaplain, you have to go ahead and obtain clinical pastoral education. And so that's an additional level of education just to even be able to work. It takes between 3 months and a year to go ahead and obtain those qualifications. And then hospice is more laid back. It's kind of the lullaby of chaplaincy. And what you're really doing is you're bringing peace to people's lives as they are walking towards death. You're helping them to reconcile whatever it is that's going on in their life. And so it might be they need a relationship with God. They're about to pass, they're about to die, and they want to make sure they're going to heaven. Or they have a situation with God and they want to make sure everything is right with God. or also bring in peace just to their family members, the family members who are grieving. So we deal a lot with loss and grief. We do bereavement groups in hospice. So there's that grief and loss component. And then we're also just shepherding these individuals through that entire terminal diagnosis to the very end. And it's a more long-term process than the hospital. The hospital, you might see them once and then you never see them again. But in hospice, you can even walk with them for years as they're dying, as they're walking towards death. And then in both situations, you are also ministering to their families because their families are showing up and you're holding their hands and you're praying with them. And so the difference really is the length of time. It is the amount of counseling skill needed. If you see overdoses in hospitals and you go and you minister to those who, even a teenager who have had a drug overdose, maybe they're getting clean. You're also going into psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in multiple psychiatric hospitals. I'm administering to the mentally ill and those who need assistance. And so you need a little bit of a different touch and level of psychological counseling knowledge. In hospice, it's a little bit more general, but both require a kind heart and a kind soul.
Wow. It's a different kinds of ministry, but it's similar in the fact that you are responding and being present in the most critical moments in their lives. They're rushed for emergency, or they're facing death or dying. These are not joyous moments, occasions, but to be there as God's extended hands and voice of peace, and the gift of presence. That is very, very powerful. In your introductions, you briefly talked about the opportunity to work with different kinds of people, like Jehovah's Witness and all these kind of people that you work with. And so as ministers, we know what we believe, but we also know that we need to reach out to the world. The world includes all those people, right? The people who believe in other things. So how do we ground ourselves in our faith and Word of God while reaching and ministering to others? And there's a balance, because you're not supposed to be like convert people to Christianity as a chaplain, right? But you're supposed to also show and demonstrate the love of God. And if the timing is perfect and occasion is perfect, you extend the gospel message. But how do we find that balance without violating the laws as a chaplain?
Yeah. So first of all, you look at each person as a soul. And what you're doing is you're taking care of the soul. You're shepherding the soul. And so regardless of religion or denomination, we work with all different denominations. That is a person that God loves and God cares about. And because you have the heart of the shepherd, because you care as God cares for them, then you can reach out your hands. Now, that kind of balance of staying rooted in your faith, you know what you believe. You know what you want for the person. If you're Christian, you want them to believe in Jesus and you want them to make it to heaven. But ultimately, you're there just to be with them. And then, those doors do open. People do come to faith in Jesus Christ. And it happens all the time. Maybe it's somebody who is even an atheist, or they're like, I believe in God, but I don't know what God. And those are opportune times because those individuals are not walking into our churches. Those people are not interacting with pastors and ministers. And then it's countless times that people have asked, well, what do you believe? And then why do you believe it? I mean, I work with Jews, and I've worked with about 75 Holocaust survivors and been able to minister to them. And they always ask, if they don't believe in God, how can you believe in God when what happened with the Jews happened with the Jews? And what an open door to just confront some key issues that's a point of distress in their life, but that has also kept them from the love of Jesus. So it's a great time to engage with people as they wrestle with those important questions.
Wow, that is really, really powerful. And I think those are the things that our local pastors and ministers actually need to train ourselves with, because we sometimes get too comfortable with talking to the group of Christians. So we don't know how to even present the gospel to the non-Christians in a way that is an answer to what they're seeking, right? And it's so powerful. So that leads me to my final questions to you. So what ministry principles can local ministers glean from chaplaincy ministries? I mean, you guys are in the world, right? And you guys are embodying the gospel, not just preaching behind the pulpit. You're embodying the gospel, and I just love that environment. And my husband is actually a hospice chaplain, and some of the things that he does, like pastoral care, even after a client passes on, he's ministering to the family for 13 months so that they can celebrate this, not celebrate, they can spend that anniversary together, the first anniversary. That's very most difficult time. As a pastor, we don't think about that. 13 months, that feels too long. But as a chaplain, that's, I don't know if it's a regular thing or his personal commitment, but he does that. That's something like, wow, I need to learn from him. So what are some of the ministry principles do you think our pastors and ministers can glean from chaplain ministries?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I've noticed with churches today is they kind of went away from pastoral care. And if you think about the church, it's God's flock. And a lot of the time when people are installed into lead pastor positions, they're given the shepherd's staff. And it's more than just a prop when you're being given a church, but it's the commission to shepherd God's people. And so pastoral care is about reaching out. It's not just about Sunday services and the programs, but it's about caring for the people because God cares for his people. So go ahead and respond to critical incidences, respond to those situations that maybe there is a miscarriage, maybe there is a death of a loved one, maybe somebody went into the hospital. And respond to those exact situations and then remember to follow up. Those are opportunities to reach the entire family for Jesus, and even increase your church numbers. If we do pastoral care well, our church is going to increase because the church is about people. So build the people, and then go ahead and install and instill pastoral care into your groups. Go ahead and have specific groups for widows, as Marlene mentioned earlier, which is pastoral care, chaplaincy. Go ahead and do it for mental health issues, body image issues, for youth, and even include elements into your sermon that will just help bolster and create an environment where you care about people. Everybody wants to go to a church where you are loved and you are cared about. And that is absolutely the heart of chaplaincy and the heart of God for all his people.
Wow, that's really cool. As I'm listening to you and Marlene, and I was thinking about, you know what, I think pastors and ministers need to be chaplains first. Before we enter into pastoral ministry. It's just going to benefit the body of Christ even more. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for your voice and influence. Church is better because of you. Appreciate you so much today.
I appreciate you.
Guys, these women are doing amazing ministries, and you can be one of them. And if you're interested, I want to share with you how you can consider being a chaplain. And I have Manny Cordero, who is a director of the Chaplaincy Ministries, joining us today. And he will be unpacking how you can take the first step toward becoming a chaplain. And in fact, even talk about the diversity of chaplaincy ministry. Hi, Manny, how are you?
Hey, Sahi, good to see you, and good to be here on this podcast with you and with this wonderful women of God that had so wonderful stories to share.
Right. As I was sharing, chaplaincy ministries to me is the epitome of God's creativity. Like there's just so many different expressions of ministries outside the church walls. So I'm super excited to hear about how, if anybody is interested on onboarding this type of ministry, what is the first thing that they need to do?
Well, the first thing, they need to be called by God to do this kind of work. Because if you start doing this work without being called by God, you're going to do harm. So just to ensure, or to make sure, now they can taste and see where this is for them. They can become volunteers in different organizations. Now the requirements are different depending on the level of chaplaincy or whether you want to be a full-time chaplain like Ellie Canfield, or whether you want to be a missionary chaplain like Marlene. There's different kind of requirements that they would have. But I would say, to your question, the first thing is know that you're being called by God, and then begin to look for opportunities. Begin to pray that the Lord will open your eyes to the need. When we go to buy a car, we're looking for a car that is unique, and maybe we go to the lot and this car, I've never seen it before, but it's beautiful. I want to buy it. I buy it. I take it out, and as soon as I do, there's like 100 of them around. I'm not unique. So it kind of opened my eyes to something that I wasn't seeing before. And that's what I think women who are interested is pray that the Lord will open their eyes to the ministry opportunities out there, and then begin to serve. And that is going to lead. And if the Lord wants them, or if this leads to a job or to an opportunity, then even better. But even as a volunteer, they can connect to us as long as they're credential holder.
Oh, so they must be a credential holder in order for them to become a chaplain, right?
To be endorsed as a chaplain, yes.
Very good. And there's no limitations, it seems like, as to what kind of chaplaincy ministry that they can do. Like, for example, the Marlene situation, she was the first woman to be the chaplain to the widows. So I guess like you could create a ministry with chaplaincy ministry as well. Is that the case?
That's right. We've had some other people ministering to widows before, but Marlene is dedicated just to widows. But yes, it's on limit. It's limitless. It's just what God puts in your heart. I get this all the time, Sahi. Somebody calls me and says, you need to have a chaplain at X or Y. God is saying to me, this community needs a chaplain, and my response is, okay, the God must be calling you to do it. Recently, Sahi, let me just give you an example of where this could go. Recently, I heard of the need for chaplains in the esports community, what my generation will call gamers, and I've been out there trying to recruit that kind of population. And the Lord has sent us some people who are doing ministry in the gaming community. The billions of people who play games online are there and in need of somebody to come and minister to them. And then the Lord just send us somebody who had an interest in ministering to what they call the geek community, people who are into Star Wars and who are into superheroes and go to Comic-Cons. So we have a chaplain now that goes to Comic-Cons. He has a Bible study in a comic book store and does a podcast like this with 25,000 viewers. So I mean, it's just limitless. We have orphan care. We have sports chaplains. We have ministry to homeless, to trafficked people. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. So yes, there's all kinds of opportunities. And like I said, if you begin to pray that the Lord will show you the need, you begin to see where you can fit into these opportunities.
That's great. Limitless. I love that word. And you're right. Wherever there is people, you need to have that kind of ministry. You have opportunity to serve them. So that's so cool. Manny, what is a website that people can go and check out this ministry?
Chaplaincy at ag.org.
All right. So thank you so much for that information. Thank you, Manny, for all you're doing. We appreciate your leadership and your voice, and thank you for championing women called to ministry.
Thank you, Sahi, for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Guys, that was just powerful stories. And I just want you to know that ministry, yes, it is indeed limitless. When you're called, and if you are called, God will create that pathway for you. So stay faithful and stay resilient and keep learning. Until next time, just follow us, our social media, AG Women Ministers, and we will see you next time. Love you guys.
Hello, Crystal Martin here, National Director of the Network of Women Ministers. Really grateful to spend a leadership moment with you, really spoken out of my own life and journey. So our leadership topic is going to be that of title. Now, it's been interesting to me in my journey as a female minister. I have people tell me all the time that title doesn't matter, that you're doing this for God, and you're a servant leader, and you're a servant. And so just get out there and work for God. So title, and then often pay, just really don't matter. But can I tell you, to have a title means that you have authority delegated to you to get a job done. And so if I am a teacher, it means that I have a certification. It means that I've gone through schooling. And not only does the state give me a certification that makes me eligible to be a teacher, also my school often has extra certifications that I have to go through in order to use that title of a teacher. And so as we grow as ministers, I think it's very important. Now, it is true, we don't take our titles to heaven. Like, Jesus doesn't care. He's not going to be up there like, ooh, congratulations, you got a new title. There is a bit about a title that's about how we operate on this earth. But that delegated authority is incredibly important to get a job done. And so in that, I would say title does matter. Pay attention to what your role is and how you're operating in that role in order to advance the kingdom in the greatest capacity. And I'm going to speak, as I said, from my own journey, that I work alongside a ministry spouse. Sometimes when there's two people in a family, both in ministry, this is where it gets the grayest. Because a lot of our women will just say, well, my husband has a title, I'll just work inside of his title. But honestly, that isn't showcasing what God has, again, called you to do and where your gift set lies. And so one thing, I've been in ministry for 25 years, and no matter whether I've been working next to my husband in ministry or if I have a separate ministry role outside of what he's doing, I've always insisted that we have separate job descriptions, that we flow within those job descriptions, that we work within our titles, and that also that there is payment for both titles. Because although I am grateful to be a servant leader, I do believe in our missionary call, and that the workman is worthy of the funding that they have. Both my husband and myself, we are worthy of the funding that we have to do the work of the ministry. So I'll close with this. If you're married, because to a ministry spouse, this is even more important, but for each of us, work to ensure you understand what your title in ministry is, and that you can give a 3-minute elevator speech of what you do in ministry outside your husband and kids. Because although they are an important part of your ministry, for one thing, your kids are not going to be with you forever. And that spouse, I always say this, I love ministering with my husband, but he's my spouse before my ministry partner. And sometimes it's great to keep that separate. So do your 3-minute elevator speech. Don't even mention your husband or your kids. And that will help define that call of God that he is placing on your life and help define your title. May God bless you today. May he cause you to flourish in every area of your ministry. Let's do this together.